So, Janani, tell us, what's your favorite memory of Holi?
So I'm Janani. I'm one of the co-founders of Sampurna Ahara, and I run the bakery and the condiment section there. The first few years of my life, I don't have any memory of Holi at all. I grew up in South India, and as I went through primary school and sort of around 8 to 12, I started realizing that there were people doing this weird thing around us at a certain amount of at a certain time of the year. And I slowly sort of joined into that, and it was quite fun as kids to have this one summer day that you all got like soakingly wet, and you had all these colors on you. Um, but it was just it was something that started small. That had you'd have a small party with your friends. You might get bothered a little bit by the color and wander off. It wasn't as adventurous as it might have been in North India, and it took like teenage years before you started getting really boisterous about Holi and learning what could be the real spirit of that playfulness. And it actually took me until 25 years of age to first have Thandai.
You've worked a lot with nature and nature experience and learning. How do you feel that Holi and colors relates to the natural world?
Yeah, so I spent 10 years, and I still also am a social entrepreneur. I work with children and nature. And you, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about colors in nature is this challenge that I often give children and adults also, that makes them really aware of the diversity of color around them. So the challenge is, can you find one leaf that has 10 different colors on it? And it's not sufficient to have shades of green and then call that a color. You have to have 10 different colors on a single leaf. And everyone says this, you might have, oh, that's impossible. Leaves are one or two colors, maybe four colors. 10? Yeah, it's actually possible, and so that minute scale of color is beautiful, and then the giant scale of color in the city that we live in Bangalore, around this time in February and March, the tabebuyas and multiple other avenue trees bloom. And so you see all of these trees go fully one color. You have yellows and orange and purples and reds and you pinks, and that's like, it feels like the whole city is playing Holi in that point of time. Yeah.
So, you used to love paneer and curds. What happened?
I still love paneer and curds. I wasn't like a person who could, like really subsist on dairy and sugar. Basically, I would have milk and curds and paneer and ghee and all kinds of sugary products and just absolutely enjoy it. I don't think I ever got tired of it. And then 10 years ago, I found WFPB eating, and that cured me of a whole bunch of diseases, whole food, plant based diets. It cured me of a whole bunch of illnesses that I had. And so I also, my body said, okay, now you started, you got to stick to it. So every time I tried deviating from the diet, I would fall ill again. And so I learned how to follow a whole food plant based diet. And then I felt like I was robbed of this whole bunch of delicacies that I loved. And so, we've really been working over the years to find replacements for it and to find other foods that fulfill that craving. And that's how you discover the diversity of options possible. You have this, remove this one usual thing, and I can now make 10 different kinds of milks, maybe 20 different kinds of milks to replace that. And each of them have their own properties. And it's been exciting to explore those options and to use that to make Thandai. So I was 25 when I first discovered this thing. I was already on a whole food plant-based diet. So I've never actually had the original stuff. But my colleagues and people around us at Sampurna Ahara turned to us and said, can you make Thandai for us without sugar and without milk? And we tried. And we think we succeeded. You should let us know if you ever try ours. But it was really exciting to explore the different options.
So, how many different types of milk can you make from plants?
Let me put it into categories, because there's thousands of different plants available, and therefore there are thousands of different milks available, right? So you can have the nut milks. They're probably easiest to replace dairy with a nut milk. So you can have cashew and almond and peanut and walnut and hazelnut and these kinds of nut milks. Cashew is probably the most similar to dairy milk in taste and texture. Then you can have grain milk, so you can have things like rice milk or oat milk, and I'm sure any other grain milk. You also form milks. There's actually a traditional Indian sweet made out of ragi milk in the Konkan coast, where you just soak ragi grains, make milk out of it, add a little methi, interestingly, and I think they add jaggery, and boil it, and it sets like a jelly. So that's the interesting thing about grain milks. Usually they thicken when you boil it, because grain cooks and thickens when you cook. And they don't often have too much fat content. So when you're using it to replace something, replace a dairy-based milk, it might be interesting to add some nut and some grain together. That's second category. And then the third category are sort of lentil or legume-based milks. Soy milks, or actually peanut milk would fall into this category and not the first one. It behaves like a legume milk because it is one. And then you could also make milks out of things like chickpea or I'm forgetting the English names for them, but basically most lentils. So they'll all have a strong flavor. Each of them will be a slightly different flavor. You'll have to boil them before you can eat them, and they do thicken on boiling. So it might offer you really different textures and flavors to other kinds of milks. And so we had to experiment with all of these before we could make Thandai. We have settled for a mixture of almond milk and soy milk because it's a really nice mix of flavor and it's a really nice mix of health.
So you've talked quite a bit about like the fat content in milk, but people also have dairy milk for calcium and protein, right? So how do you match that in a plant milk?
That's exactly why we mix soy milk and almond milk, to be able to provide really nice nutritional benefits. Soy is a really complete protein. It has a whole bunch of amino acids, and there's a lot of, I wouldn't explain it correctly, so I'm not going to try. But it's really healthy in the level of protein that it offers you, calcium and iron. Almond is as well, but the mix of the healthy fats from the almond milk and the healthy protein richness of the soy milk is ideal for us, is what we feel.
Great. So traditionally Thandai has nuts, and so what you're doing is basically skipping the milk and making it healthy, right? How do you get the sweetness, the sugar?
We don't use sugar or jaggery or honey or things like maple syrup or agave syrup that people normally use. We also try to avoid high amounts of stevia. So most of the usual sweeteners are out. But a really nice thing that we have found is dates is our ultimate weapon when we're sweetening something. And that's what we use for our Thandai. It's entirely date sweetened. We make a date syrup, which means we soak the dates and then we grind it with the fiber. We don't extract the fiber and make it sort of jammy as you might find store-bought date syrup. So we have the healthy fibers of the date as well. And that offers a nice thickness to our Thandai. Makes it like a really lovely mouthful.
So can you give us a quick recipe of your Thandai to try out at home?
Yes, definitely. So interestingly, most Thandai powders that you might find outside won't have sugar or dairy in it. And so you could safely use that because it's a whole bunch of spices and it's a little bit of almond powder usually. And there's recipes online available for that, and I'm going to leave you to figure that out because I feel like each person might like a different mix of spices, right? That plus make a mix of soy and almond milk, which is our recipe. I'm going to let you guys know everything about our recipe. If you have the effort, if you want to take the effort of doing it yourself at home, please do. Right? So we use half almond milk and half soy milk, and you just have to soak, grind, and filter the soy milk and boil it, but don't filter and don't boil the almond milk. Right? Filter, boil, cool the soy milk, mix it with cold, freshly ground almond milk, and soak dates in water and grind it smooth and use that for your sweetener. So use Thandai mixes, either a recipe online that you find you might like the flavors of, or you can buy a powder that doesn't have milk or sugar in it. And then mix that with half soy milk and half almond milk, and use date paste to sweeten to the level that you'd like. Another little tip that we found is that you do not need too much date paste. You might need double the amount of date paste as the amount of sugar you might have added, and cool it down, put it in the fridge before you decide, taste it and decide whether you like that level of sweetness or not. Sometimes that taste changes after you cool it.
Great. And for people who are in Bangalore, can they get some of the Thandai that you make?
Absolutely. If you would like to just order from us, just go to sampoornaahara.com and search for Thandai, Thandai, or I'm guessing we'll put the link with this video for you to find. And we have a few different options available, and the bigger, if you're buying for a party, it's quite economical. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Janani. Look forward to chatting with you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.